Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 15th meeting of the Board of Trustees of ETSU. Our students, faculty, and staff have just completed their fourth week back to class. Even though the fall semester is certainly different than others in the past, the magic that surrounds the start of the new academic year is alive and well at ETSU. In the days leading up to the coming to campus, the incoming members of the class of 2024 participated in our annual Preview ETSU activities. While Preview was held virtually this year, it continued the long-standing tradition of providing our incoming freshmen with the opportunity to meet new students, build friendships, learn about clubs, organizations, and avenues of engagement available to them at ETSU. Another annual event, the faculty convocation, was held on the Friday prior to the start of class, during which time we welcomed new faculty to ETSU, acknowledged the contributions of those earning faculty emeritus status, and celebrated 3 professors who received the Distinguished Faculty Award, which is the highest honor presented to a university faculty member in the area of teaching, research, and service. Please join me in congratulating the 2020 Outstanding Faculty Award winners, who are Dr. Brooks Pond from the Gatton College of Pharmacy, Dr. Mohammed Lagazar from the Quillen College of Medicine, and Dr. Donna Cherry from the College of Clinical and Rehabilitative Health Sciences. The month of August witnessed several significant milestones for research efforts at ETSU. The university received a $2.7 million federal grant from HRSA, Office of Rural Health Policy, to create the Center for Substance Misuse in Rural America. The grant was won in collaboration with the Walsh Center for Rural Health Analysis at the University of Chicago. ETSU also received its first major COVID-10 research grant. Dr. Z Yao was awarded a $100,000 grant from the American Diabetes Association to explore the impact of COVID-19 on diabetes and related complications. In addition, ETSU and the Quillen VA Medical Center announced that a biorepository had been established to store blood samples from the patients who had recovered from COVID-19 that would be used for current and future coronavirus research. I want to thank all of the ETSU faculty, staff, students, resident physicians, and researchers for all they have done standing on the front lines throughout this pandemic. Even though we are barely 1 month into the 2021 academic year, work has already begun to recruit students for the fall of 2021. In the weeks ahead, ETSU's mascot, Bucky, will be leading his ETSU road trip and will be taking admissions officers with him to prospective students across the region and surrounding states. So if you see Bucky in your hometown, make sure to tell him hello. Finally, last month, Governor Lee appointed a new trustee to our board, Melissa Stegall Jones. Trustee Stegall Jones is an alum of ETSU and is a partner in the accounting firm of Blackburn, Childress, and Stegall. She is also a certified internal controls auditor. Trustee Stegall Jones is a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Tennessee Society of Certified Public Accountants. She concentrates her practice in audit, governmental, healthcare, employee benefit plans, and taxation. Melissa has served her community as a board member and past chair of the Johnson City, Washington County, Jonesboro Chamber of Commerce, Washington County United Way, and Mountain States Foundation. She has also served on the board of the Dawn of Hope and the ETSU Foundation. She currently serves as the steering committee chair for the ETSU Roan Scholars, a member of the ETSU Community and Governmental Relations Advisory Council, a board member for Northeast State Technical Community College Foundation, advisory board member of SunTrust Bank. Trustee Stegall Jones also serves in the children's ministry in her church, Central Baptist. Please join me in a virtual round of applause for our newest board member. At this point, I now turn to Dr. Green and ask that he call the roll and run through the required questions since this meeting is being conducted via Zoom. Adam?
Mr. Chairman, because trustees are participating remotely by Zoom, I must run through a series of questions before calling roll. Additionally, because we have trustees participating remotely, should any votes be taken, they must be taken by roll call. Trustees, in accordance with Tennessee Code 8-44-108, Section C3, I have two questions to ask you if you could answer for the record. I will ask both questions once and follow with a roll call so that you may respond. First, are you able to clearly hear us so you can participate in this meeting? And can you please identify any persons present in the room with you from which you are participating in this meeting? Trustee Ayers.
And hear you, and there is no one in the room with me.
Trustee DiCarlo.
I can hear you, and there is no one in the room with me.
Trustee Foley.
I can hear you, and there's no one in the room with me.
Trustee Grisham.
I can hear you, and there's no one in the room with me.
Trustee Latimer.
I can hear you, and there's no one in the room with me.
Trustee Austin Ramsey.
I can hear you and no one's present in the room with me.
Trustee Ron Ramsey. Trustee Melissa Stegall Jones.
I can hear you, and there's no one in the room with me.
Trustee Kelly Wolf.
I can hear you, and I am by myself.
And Chairman Niswonger.
I can hear you well, and I'm all alone.
Chairman, I do not detect a physical quorum present. However, a quorum does exist by the inclusion of members participating by electronic means. In accordance with Tennessee Executive Order 51, permitting safe, open, and transparent public meetings by electronic means, I would offer up to the board the following reasons that necessitate this meeting. Business critical to the operations of the institution are slated for this meeting, such as the consideration of a new out-of-state enrollment strategy, the awarding of tenure, the approval of the 2021 audit plan, as well as other items. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent recommendations from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as Governor Bill Lee, social distancing measures and limit on group gatherings are being observed. For these reasons, I would contend that participation by quorum of this board members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. Chairman, I ask that a motion be made and a roll call vote be taken for the determination of the necessity of holding this meeting. An affirmative vote will signify that a necessity does exist for this meeting to proceed. A dissenting vote will signify that a necessity does not exist for this meeting to continue.
Do I have such a motion?
I make
So
the
moved.
motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Trustee Ayers,
Aye.
trustee DeCarlo,
Aye.
trustee Foley,
Aye.
trustee Grisham,
Aye.
trustee Latimer,
Aye.
trustee Ron Ramsey, trustee Stigall Jones,
Aye.
trustee Wolf,
Aye.
and Chairman Niswonger.
Aye. Thank you, Adam. Because the meeting is being conducted virtually, we were unable to receive public comments in our traditional manner. However, for those of you who are watching, should you have comments that you would like for the board to receive, please email those comments to trustees@etsu.edu. Again, trustees@etsu.edu. This time, I'm going to hand the reins over to Dr. Noland as we ask that he move us through our agenda items today.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you and good morning. We'll draw your attention to the items contained behind tab 1 of the consent agenda. These materials are found in your agenda on page 3 for those who are moving through in an electronic format. As noted in the materials, you will find minutes from our July 17th Board of Trustees meeting, minutes from our April 24th Audit Committee meeting, and approval of minor changes to the university's mission profile and annual requirement of Tennessee Higher Education Commission. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like to pull for consideration by the full board? Hearing none, I would then ask for a motion and a second for the adoption of the consent agenda.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion by Chairman Niswonger, a second by Dr. Foley. Dr. Green, would you please take a roll call vote?
Trustee Ayers,
Aye.
trustee DeCarlo,
Aye.
trustee Foley,
Aye.
trustee Grisham,
Aye.
trustee Latimer,
Aye.
trustee Ron Ramsey, trustee Stigall Jones,
Aye.
trustee Wolf,
Aye.
and Chairman Niswonger.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is found behind tab 2, which equates to page 18 on your agenda materials. And this item brings a couple of changes and adjustment to board bylaws. It has come to the attention of the chair that the Board of Trustees should consider these 2 amendments and adjustments to the bylaws. And the first is a direct result of the pandemic and the potential for any future extraordinary circumstances. The proposal is to amend Article 2, Section 1C of the bylaws as follows. The section of the bylaws that is contained here relates to the meetings of our standing committees. The bylaws requires that all standing committees meet at least 4 times annually in conjunction with regular meetings of the board. However, given the pandemic, the changes to the bylaws would state that in the event that circumstances beyond the control of the board arise during a year which prevent the standing committees from meeting, the standing committee meetings requirement is waived. The second change to the bylaws is a result of our former Vice Chairman David Golding stepping down from the board. This is the first executive committee vacancy that our Board of Trustees has experienced. In reviewing the bylaws, the executive committee recommended allowing the full board to select a 3rd executive committee member rather than tying that position to a specific committee chairperson. Therefore, the proposal is to amend Article 2, Section 3A of the bylaws to read as follows. The executive committee shall be composed of the board chair, vice chair, and a 3rd member that shall be elected by the board to serve for 2 years, beginning July 1 of the year elected. In the event of a vacancy before expiration of the term, a successor shall be elected to fill the unexpired term at the next meeting of the board following the creation of the vacancies. Are there any questions from the board related to these two proposed amendments to the board's bylaws? Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we have a motion and a second to approve the revised bylaws as presented in the meeting materials.
I'll make a motion that we approve the new bylaws.
I second.
We have a motion by Trustee Grisham, a second by Dr. Latimer. Dr. Green, would you please take a roll call vote?
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee DeCarlo,
Aye.
trustee Foley,
Aye.
trustee Grisham,
Aye.
trustee Latimer,
Aye.
trustee Ron Ramsey, trustee Segal Jones,
Aye.
trustee Wolf,
Aye.
and Chairman Niswonger.
Aye.
Members of the board, the next item on your agenda is found behind tab 3, which equates to page 35 on your agenda materials. In a typical board meeting, we would have had a meeting of the audit committee prior to the full board meeting. In the absence of an audit committee meeting this time, it is important, however, that the board approve the institution's audit plan for 2021. This audit plan has worked its way through the audit committee in prior meetings. And I would now turn to Ms. Becky Lewis to present the institution's approved audit plan for the 2021 academic year.
Good morning, Chairman Niswonger and trustees.
Good morning.
Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today regarding the audit plan for fiscal year 2021. As Dr. Nolan said, enclosed in your materials is our proposed internal audit plan. Each year, my office develops an audit plan through a risk assessment process. This process includes reviewing and updating a listing of auditable areas known as the audit universe. We then perform an audit assessment of each auditable area, a risk assessment of each auditable area within that universe. Each area is measured by several risk factors, including previous audits performed, internal control structure, personnel, technology, or policy changes, size, sensitivity, and external audit coverage. The areas with the highest risk value become the audits we feel would be the most valuable to perform during the year. We also include in our plan required audits. These are typically those required by law, by policy, by our financial institution, and we also performed one required by the Corporation for Public Broadcast. Our plan also includes special requests. These requests come from administrators, from the audit committee, and from other board members. We also perform follow-up reviews. These are audits which are performed to ensure actions have been taken based on prior recommendations. And the proposed plan also includes audits and investigations which were in progress from the prior fiscal year. Once our plan is approved, it's submitted to the Comptroller of Treasury, Division of State Audit, and all revisions to the plan must be approved through the audit committee throughout the year. Is there any questions or comments regarding the proposed plan for fiscal year 2021?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I would like to note in Ms. Lewis's presentation that the structure of elements contained in the audit plan for the current academic year are consistent with what has been the operating practice of the board in the past. The follow-up items are, as she noted, an element that allows us to go back and review the findings of prior audits to ensure that those recommendations are being implemented and actualized. And then the special request items, several of those are at the request of either myself or the audit committee through prior conversations. The item, the men's basketball expenditures, is a standard operating practice of the institution. If we have a coach who departs Then audit comes in and conducts a review of all of the expenditures and operations of that program before the new coach begins their tenure. This directly traces its roots back to the findings of an audit that came before this board a number of years ago related to our men's tennis program. So the actions within the plan are best practice within the operations defined by the audit committee of the board. And I just wanted to provide that additional context. Finally, we'll take action on the selection of an audit committee chair later in the meeting of the board. We will hold a meeting with that audit chair once the appointment has been made, so that they have the opportunity to sit down and spend time with Ms. Lewis and with Dr. King. Just wanted to provide that context, Mr. Chair. Are there any questions for myself or Ms. Lewis on this item? Seeing none, I would then ask for a motion and a second to approve the 2021 audit plan as presented in the meeting materials. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Dr. Latimer, a second.
Second.
Second by Trustee Ayers. Dr. Green, if you could please take a roll call vote.
Trustee Ayers,
Aye.
Trustee DeCarlo,
Aye.
Trustee Foley,
Aye.
Trustee Grisham,
Aye.
Trustee Latimer,
Aye.
Trustee Ron Ramsey, Trustee Stigall Jones,
Aye.
and Chairman Niswonger.
Aye.
And I forgot Trustee Wolf.
That's okay. Aye.
Thank you, sir.
The next series of items on the agenda emerged from our Academic Research and Student Success Committee. These items, too, are related to the operations of the institution, out-of-cycle tenure and promotion, as well as action of academic notifications. These materials are found behind tab 4 of your agenda materials, which equates to page 37 of the document. I'll now turn to our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Wilsey Bishop, to walk through these two agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. President, Chairman Niswonger, and members of the Board of Trustees. I'm excited to present to you the name of Dr. Bess Sermon Taylor, who is our new professor and chair of the Department of Audiology and Speech-Language Pathology in the College of Clinical and Rehabilitative Health Sciences. We make that particularly difficult to see how well people's speech is when they pronounce all of those names and titles. Dr. Sermon Taylor comes to us from the University of Texas at El Paso. She holds a PhD from the University of Georgia in linguistics. She also holds 2 master's degrees and all the requisite undergraduate degrees to get her to this point. She does come to us from a tenured position at the University of Texas, El Paso, where she was held numerous administrative positions also. She's been tenured there since 2012. She's also served as a Department of Rehabilitation Sciences chair, associate dean for the graduate school, and interim dean for the graduate school. And she's also served as the director of the Interdisciplinary Health Sciences PhD program there, which is going to be particularly helpful as we look to building our own PhD program that's going to be interdisciplinary and rehabilitative health sciences. You'll see Dr. Sermon Taylor's CV that's in your packet that acknowledges her significant scholarly and academic achievements. She has over 18 publications since 2016 alone. She has earned nearly $1 million in extramural funding. And in addition, she presents regionally and nationally at professional conferences, which not only speaks to her credibility, but also carries the reputation of the institution with her. She does that. So I am delighted to recommend that she be granted tenure in the rank of professor upon appointment. And this recommendation has the full support of the department chair, of the college dean, and of the president.
Are there any questions for Dr. Bishop regarding the agenda item and recommendation from staff to provide tenure upon appointment to Dr. Bess Sermon Taylor? Members of the board, on page 37 of your agenda items is a motion to adopt the resolution approving tenure in the Department of Audiology and Speech Language Pathology and the rank of professor for Dr. Taylor. Do we have a motion and a second to approve this item as presented in the meeting materials?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from trustee Ayers, a second from trustee Stigall Jones. Dr. Green, would you please take a roll call vote?
Trustee Ayers,
Aye.
trustee DeCarlo,
Aye.
trustee Foley,
Aye.
trustee Grisham, trustee Grisham,
I muted myself.
no problem. Trustee Latimer.
Aye.
Trustee Ron Ramsey.
Mm.
Trustee Stigall Jones,
Aye.
trustee Wolf,
Aye.
and Chairman Niswonger.
The next item on the agenda is found on page 53 of your materials. This is an update of academic notifications of actions taken by the university during the period of January 1, 2020 through July 31st of 2020. And we'll turn to Dr. Bishop to present this information item.
Thank you, President Nolan. Twice a year, we bring to you a notification, not for action, but for your information of the academic curricular activities that have occurred in the past period of time. And as President noted, this is for January 1 through July 31. We've provided a summary of those actions so you can see the types of action and the quantity. And if you added them up at the bottom, you'll realize that we took 84 actions that affected our curriculum or the organizational structure of the academic units during that period of time. These could be academic reorganizations to assure better functioning or greater efficiencies. There's the creation of new certificates allow for specialized study without additional requirements of a graduate degree. But we find that many students who do enroll in graduate certificates will eventually move forward to a graduate program. And this is not only an excellent workforce development strategy, it's also a great recruitment effort for us to have graduate certificates. You'll see some name changes on the list of majors or the establishment of freestanding majors. These are being done to make our curriculum a little more understandable and accessible and help recruitment of students to programs so that we make sure that we are calling what we do, what's current and what is appealing to those who hire our graduates and to students who are looking for the right academic program. And doing so, we do believe supports recruitment of our students. You'll see some new concentrations within degree programs, and those are there for the purpose of expanding students' ability to focus on some particular areas and specialize. It does help recruitment and it prepares a better informed graduate. And then you'll see quite a number of actions that were basically curriculum cleanup, where either we terminated programs where we had no students enrolled for a period of time. Some programs may have been inactivated with the intent that they be revamped to become more current. And then you'll see some changes in hours that particularly in many cases have been related to some changes in federal regulations for financial aid. So of those items, I'll call attention to just a few to highlight. I think you'll be interested to know that under the establishment of a new academic unit, we did merge the School of Continuing Studies and Academic Outreach and the School of Graduate Studies, create a new College of Graduate and Continuing Studies. We were able to do this because of the retirement of the Dean of the School of Continuing Studies and Academic Outreach. And we believe that this new organizational structure will help us certainly realize significant efficiencies in operations. And we think it's going to support some better programming opportunities as we look at graduate and lifelong learning together as a continuum. And so we're excited about that. You'll also see that Department of Medical Education was created within the Quillen College of Medicine. We've just completed a very successful LCME visit, and in doing this, we realized that to have a central location that focused on accreditation and curriculum-related work was going to be important. We believe this enhances and supports our undergraduate student medical education. And when I say undergraduate, that's those students who are in process to obtain the MD degree, and also for the professional development of our faculty. You'll see some interesting new certificates that we have created: the Graduate Certificate in Health Data Analytics, International Business, Marketing Analytics, General Theater, and our Business Administration, our MBA program, has been looking at ways to bring new programming forward to attract students who are interested in some specialized areas, and they've added a concentration in cybersecurity management and business analytics. So there are, I think, about 12 pages of changes that are available in your packet. If you have questions about any one of those changes, I'll be glad to stop and answer questions. Otherwise, I would encourage you to look at them to see how busy your faculty and academic administrative leadership team has been over the past 6 months to keep the university on the cutting edge of curricular activities and scholarly pursuits.
I would like to echo Dr. Bishop's comment around the importance of the college reorganization with the merger of the graduate school and the College of Continuing Studies. This will create an opportunity for speed to market for new programs. In my enrollment update, you'll see that our graduate programs have been solid in their base of development. And I think that this is consistent with conversations we had with the board a year ago. As I said, we were going to look at the organization and structure of the academic aspects of the campus. So this is action that is consistent with those conversations. And you'll see continued examination and restructuring of academic units as we move through the fall semester and into the spring. So questions for Dr. Bishop about the materials as presented in the agenda? Dr. Bishop, I thank you for your leadership and for the work that you and the faculty have done over what has been a very unique period of time. And this activity in the face of the pandemic and work through Zoom is a great deal of effort on behalf of the faculty. And I thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board will now call your attention to materials found on page 63 of the agenda. And this presentation is the culmination of several years worth of effort by the campus. From the early work of the late Dr. Chris Dula, who led a task force on diversity across the university, to the planning work of the late Dr. Angela Lewis, the campus has been actively engaged in conversations to shape and frame an aggressive action agenda for equity and inclusion. As the board will recall, a central tenet of our master plan is tied to diversity, and the plan that Dr. Johnson will soon present actualizes the goals of our board strategic plan. Now more than ever, it's important that we as a campus affirm our commitment to our values that declare that people come first and are treated with dignity and respect. And this plan does that and more. I'll now call on Dr. Keith Johnson to share with you the university's equity and inclusion strategic plan, which is found under tab 6 of your agenda materials. Dr. Johnson.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
As Dr. Nolan did a great job kind of setting the stage. When Dr. Nolan asked me to take on some of the responsibilities of equity and inclusion, we had a lot of discussions about what that office will look like. We're in the process of making significant changes to the office. At one point, the Office of Equity was really the Office of Diversity, and there was a lot of compliance associated with it. What we've done, we've restructured the office. Compliance is now housed in the General Counsel's office in the Division of compliance. So that's been moved out. So the office now is on equity and inclusion as it relates to curriculum, as it relates to programming, as it relates to development for faculty, staff, and students, in a variety of things. So I'll talk a little bit about that. One of the things that I did when I first came over to that office was to rename the office. The office, again, as I mentioned, was the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I took out the name diversity because diversity, the word itself have a tendency to create roadblocks. But really diversity is all about numbers. And I think if we do a good job with equity and inclusion, you know, diversity becomes kind of the byproduct of the work that we do. So that's been kind of my focus. So we talk in terms of equity, which is about pathways, and inclusion is all about providing people access to those pathways. So as we think about the mission of the office, that was one of the first things that we ended up reworking was the mission. We wanted to make sure that the mission actually aligned with the university's mission. So we collaborate, we promote, we support and advance the university's mission. And the office serves to promote an environment where people come first and are treated with dignity and respect and are encouraged and supported to achieve their full potential. And we've been working really hard in this last year to try to accomplish that. Regarding setting the stage for the strategic plan, the strategic pursuit of a set of balanced diversity objectives, which reposition diversity and inclusion as fundamental to institutional excellence and quality. And so this is something that's been, you know, I've been thinking about for a very long time. I've been at East Tennessee State University now 28 years. And a lot of the work that I do has centered around equity and inclusion. I kind of wear two hats at this point. I'm also the chair of the engineering, technology, and surveying department, whereas a lot of the work that I've been doing in that area over the last 20 years have also had a national impact because I've been able to change a lot of the criteria for even our accreditation for ABET, which is Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, as well as for the American Society for Engineering Educators. And I realized that as a university, many of the programs that we have outside of the area of responsibility that I had also had some equity and inclusion criteria that they had to meet for accreditation. So it was a good time to try to incorporate the whole academic piece into equity and inclusion, along with a lot of the development that's associated with the office. So that's kind of been the framework for that kind of got me started in all of this. So we also looked at, in terms of strategic plan, we wanted to align the strategic goals and strategies directly with the university. So it's not something that's separated from what we typically would do or something that we've established as a university. I want to make sure that everything that we did pretty much aligns. And so as we focus on some of those areas within those 6 objectives or 6 goals that I'm going to share with you today, one of the things that we want to try to accomplish over time to get the HEED recognition. And HEED is the Higher Education Excellence in Diversity Award that is awarded to universities that do a really good job at its equity and inclusion efforts. I feel pretty strongly that we can achieve this. You know, this is not necessarily the goal of why we're doing what we're doing. I think as a result of what we're doing, this becomes, again, a byproduct of the work that we're going to be doing. The first goal that I'll talk about is to promote a welcoming, supportive, and inclusive learning and working environment for all faculty, staff, and students and visitors. So to do this, we wanted to identify and expand programming and opportunities to promote equity and inclusion, and also serve as a partner to the ETSU community in facilitating understanding of equity and inclusion issues, educational programs, and best practices. We initially started, making sure that we had a good presence on campus. We wanted to have a presence that was far more reaching than just campus. So we started and got very active into social media. So we have Facebook presence, we have Instagram, we updated the website, we started an equity and inclusion newsletter. And so we began to really get out there to try to promote ourselves and promote ETSU as this welcoming environment that we were trying to create. Not that it wasn't welcoming before, but what is good can always be made better. Goal 2 was to assess and monitor institutional progress on access, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And what we attempted to do is to conduct regular evaluations and assessment of diversity and inclusion activities. You know, we talked about the Facebook, and also feedback will be solicited from students annually. Reports will be submitted with the annual report to highlight faculty, staff, and student needs. So one of the things, my goal here, or at least as part of one of the strategies, that I wanted to develop somewhat of a report card to be able to know whether or not we are very successful. I also wanted the office to be somewhat of a clearinghouse. From my experience at East Tennessee State University, there's a lot of great things that's happening on our campus. The unfortunate thing is that not all of us are aware what those great things are. And so when it comes down to equity and inclusion efforts, I wanted to make sure that we could be that clearinghouse where we could have a way of organizing and then creating a very good assessment plan to be able to annually assess what we're doing and be able to set some benchmark data to determine where we want to come. And so this strategic plan that I'm going over with you all really is a 2-year plan. It's very robust, it's a very aggressive plan that's going to move us forward. But the reality is I started working on these things before I actually put them in the plan, because I knew it was the right thing to do, and that was the direction that the university was going to be moving. Goal 3 was to provide personal and professional development and public programming related to enhancing understanding of diversity and inclusion. So we're going to update, cultivate, and incorporate a clear and compelling image of the Central Institutional Diversity Training Unit. So as a result, there were a lot of things that we're going to do, such as a strategy. After working with Dr. Nolan, we decided that what we're going to do is establish an ETSU ballot diversity dialogue series where we bring some named people to the campus annually, maybe a couple times a year, who would be able to share a lot of information with us. Also, we have an equity and inclusion conference that we started last year. And in fact, the conference this year it starts on Tuesday of next week, Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And if you haven't registered yet, you have an interest, the deadline is today. We're approaching 300 participants in that particular conference. Due to the COVID-19, we are virtual, but the interest is there. And as Dr. Nolan, when he set the kind of the tone for this presentation, indicated that the timing was great. And there's a lot of information that we're wanting to provide and educate our readers, our listeners, and our participants. And the conference is one way to do that. And we have quite a few people who've already engaged in being a part of that process as well. Goal 4 was kind of a 2-part goal, which was to recruit, retain, and graduate increasing numbers of students from underrepresented and underserved populations and international students. And part B of that particular goal was to recruit and retain a greater number of individuals from underrepresented population in administrative, faculty, staff positions, and especially into leadership roles across campus, including chairs, deans, vice presidents, and the like. So that was extremely important for us. And we have a big focus in making sure that we can try to accomplish, those particular goals. So what we're doing is coaching. We're consulting and coaching departments in college units to improve cross-cultural communication, as well as work with those individuals to access educational needs and solutions. One thing that I started some time ago is a program where I identified as a diverse ETSU, where we recruit potential faculty. These are individuals who will be looking for positions really soon. These are folks who are completing their PhDs. Some are on a postdoc. And we bring those individuals to East Tennessee State University. And what I do is, prior to ever bringing them to the campus, I will interview them. I spend 3 days, and I typically take about 2 or 3 people from the university with me. We typically go to Tampa or Washington, D.C., or some other place in the U.S. And I meet. The goal is to interview approximately 130 to 140 people over a 3-day period. We look at their profiles that we've identified as we interview them, and then we match those individuals with the kind of institution that they're looking for, kind of programs that they're looking for, and the like. And from that list of people that we interview, typically is around 15 to 25 people in that range that really are a good fit to ETSU. And those are the people that we bring here to East Tennessee State University. As a result of that, bringing them here, I then follow up and try to put into postdoc slots where people can then come and spend additional time on campus and work with our university. And over time, the goal is that those folks become faculty members at East Tennessee State University. We currently have some on campus. The person who I hired in the Office of Equity and Inclusion as a coordinator for a lot of the activities that we're doing also was a part of that particular program. So it works, and we're going to continue to push that. Goal 5, promote undergraduate curricular requirements to include significant intercultural perspectives, consult and coach college department unit leadership to improve cross-cultural communication, as well as work with those individuals to access educational needs and identify solutions. One of the things that we're doing is we're working with the Center of Teaching Excellence to help with programming to make sure that if we have these expectations for faculty to be inclusive in their curriculum and in their classroom, we need to make sure that they're equipped to do that. Currently, what we're doing, we're pilot testing a program in our University 1020 class this semester, looking at materials that we can include in the class that will be inclusive, if you will, and exciting for students. And so once we finish this semester, we tweak and review our results. The goal is to roll this out into our other freshman level classes, including ENTC 1510 and some of the other ones that are first year classes for our students. Also, regarding faculty and staff, we're looking at developing what most would refer to as diversity training. I call it inclusive excellence training for our faculty, our staff, and our students. I'm pilot testing starting each Friday in October. Faculty from across the campus, from arts and sciences, from education, business and technology, from medicine, and a couple other areas. And so we will be actually doing some diversity training, equity, inclusive excellence training. And from that, we will learn from that process, make adjustments as needed, and then we will roll that out in the spring semester. And so we'll start having a campus-wide inclusive excellence training for faculty and staff. In the interim, what we're doing, there was a grant that I wrote this past semester, and it was awarded to help with this process. So that's what's giving us a big motivation and incentive to actually do this, because the training that we're doing right now, one of the variables that we have right now that will not exist when we roll across campus is that a part of my grant, I have a stipend for all the participants. So the motivation is a little bit different. So hopefully the motivation will still be the same without the stipend when we roll it out across campus. So that's something that's extremely important. And the last goal is to develop and strengthen partnerships with diverse communities locally, regionally, nationally, and globally. So we want to kind of augment community engagement and foster campus partnerships related to equity and inclusion. Dr. Nolan and I, we had a meeting, I guess about 3 weeks ago with the area Black pastors, and what we're trying to do is expand, our connection in the community. And what we wanted to do is to find out what this population of people think about our institution and their perception of what our role should be as an institution in our community. And so we're going to kind of expand that, meet with other groups, make bigger connections. And we want to have not just these one-time meetings, but these ongoing meetings so that we can have the pulse of what people are thinking about our role in the institution and how we can, as an institution, be more effective with impacting our community in the multiple ways that we do here in the Tri-Cities. So that was a summary. You all have the plan. And so at this time, I'd like to see if you have any questions or if there are any further discussions.
Are there any questions for Dr. Johnson regarding the institution's equity and inclusion plan? I would like to note that the full plan will be posted on his website later this afternoon.
Yes.
and that this is a body of work that the institution has been engaged in for a number of years. Really want to applaud Dr. Johnson for his leadership. In addition to serving in this role, he's also chair of our engineering technology department, so he is doing double duty, but doing so with compassion and grace. So any questions for Dr. Johnson?
I have a question. What is the percentage of minorities in the class at ETSU? All minorities?
Chairman Niswonger, I'm going to walk through our enrollment as a portion of my report, but for this fall, 78%, I'm trying to remember, 78% of our overall enrollment is Caucasian. So the remaining 22 are of other races. For African-American students, the number is like 6.7, which is up from 6.3 or so in 2016. I'm trying to remember this, but I have the exact numbers in my presentation later this morning.
Yeah. For our region, that would seem like it's a pretty high number.
The number is significantly more representative than that for the region as a whole. And another drill down on this, while about 6.5% or so of the undergraduate population is African-American, more than 12% of the students in the residence hall this fall are African-American. So we have a wonderful opportunity for mentoring, for outreach, for engagement, to ensure that all students at the institution have a meaningful and impactful fall semester. But our on-campus enrollment this fall is much more diverse than the overall enrollment as a whole.
I didn't drill down on your numbers for enrollment. This may be in there. Is the graduation rate, say the 6-year graduation rate, similar to all other students?
No, sir, it's not. And that's one of the elements of the institution's strategic plan. So in the board strategic plan, there's a goal related to moving those graduation numbers. And we'll turn to Dr. Johnson to discuss some of the work we're doing there. Maybe Dr. Johnson in particular, the work that you've done with the Bridge program to try to move those numbers.
Yeah. When we look at the Bridge program, which is focused on underrepresented population of students, those numbers are amazing. In fact, looking at those students, and we have like 3-year data for those students. And when I look at just a comparison of the 3-year data, in fact, those students who participate in the Bridge Plus program, their persistence is much greater than the white population of students on this campus. So the intervention of the kinds of activities that we've included with mentoring, the tutoring, the shadowing, and those kinds of things that we put in place are really working. And so we haven't had it long enough to look at the 6-year graduation, but in terms of persistence from freshman to sophomore, from sophomore to junior, much higher than the rest of the population. So what that tells me is that, we're really on to something. We're able to do things that other universities in many cases are not able to do at this point. And so we made a significant investment just recently in with the Bridge students. So we're looking at just like some of the activities that you see with the Rome Scholars, study abroad, et cetera. We want to make sure that these students have an opportunity to do some study abroad as well, and other kinds of things that's associated with persistence to graduation. So it's working effectively. Regarding numbers and students of color, a significant numbers of African-American students, as you're probably aware of, are athletes at East Tennessee State University. Mm-hmm. So if we didn't have athletics, obviously the numbers would really go down. But typically that's what you see in most predominantly white institutions. When you start looking at athletics, especially football and basketball, you find that an overwhelming majority of those students are African Americans.
Mm-hmm. Well, that Bridge program, we had dinner with them at one of our last meetings, live meetings. Mm-hmm. Impressive leadership in that program, and an impressive program. Dr. Sherlin, I've looked at that and thought maybe those are things that we need to be sure are implanted across the university for all students, and
Well,
many of the features are.
yeah, right. Well, the thing that I've always promoted is that what works for African American students work for any student, right? Because what they are looking for is pretty much the same thing that most students who are successful will get anyway, and that is just being embraced, being promoted, being included. I know what it feels like to be in a classroom where you're not necessarily included. I know what it feels like to be in a classroom where, because you're the only African American, anytime there's a question about sports, guess who gets that question, right? So I know what it feels like to be able to be the representative for an entire population of students. So anytime you're in a classroom and you get that question about, well, let's ask Keith about this particular thing, because it centers around Black Lives Matter. Well, I know what that feels like, and that's very discouraging when you're in the classroom. So the things that we're doing for these underrepresented population of students are things that will be very effective for any student. Just
Right.
treating them with a high level of respect, making them a part of what we do. I know what it's like when folks form study groups, and it's like, well, nobody asked me to be in a group, and it's not inviting. And so what we're trying to do is do that. And I spent a lot of time over my 28 years just being a mentor for so many students. I invite these students over to my home. In fact, sometimes we have so many students, I don't even know who they all are, because I allow them to invite their friends. All I do is provide food and fun, and all they do is interact. And the goal is, let's not talk about school. Let's just talk about how we're doing, period. And so that becomes huge in just being there. I still are in conversation with some of the students that I taught back in 1992, 1993. These folks are talking about retiring, but just because of some of the impacts that they've had, or impacts that I've had on them, they've been able to really prosper and do extremely well. And that's all we're trying to do, is create these relationships with students and faculty and mentors and others, and just provide them an environment where they can grow and prosper like most students. A lot of these students are coming here, lacking experiences that many of us really take for granted, like study abroad, like being invited over to a faculty member's house, like being, included in certain activities. And so what I've been trying to do is to provide that. And I've done that through establishing the National Society for Black Engineers in the Department of Engineering Technology, starting these mentoring programs, what we're doing with Bridge, what we're doing with some of the other programs that we have here. So anything that we're doing that works very effectively with African American students is scalable to be very effective with anybody. I can assure you, if we use what we're doing with the Bridge program and we roll that out to the rest of the campus, we'll get those same numbers, if not better, with the rest of the population, because everything that we're doing is definitely scalable, and there's no magic to what we're doing. It's just embracing these students and providing a very supportive environment for them to just to do very well in a place that they feel supported.
Thank you. Great work.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, were you going to add something?
I was just going to support Dr. Johnson's comments. We're working closely together to identify what's working on our campus and what's working nationally, and then go about scaling it. I think the work we've done in advising over the past few years to enhance our advising program, the work we've done with first-year experience courses, embedded peer mentors, have shown in our graduation rates that we're making progress. And the latest data in first-year persistence that Dr. Nolan's going to share shows that we're heading in the right directions. But it's the kind of work that Dr. Johnson's program is doing that we need to be working together on across the campus.
Thank you.
Great work. Are there statistics that separate the number of students attending that are non-athletes? Because you indicated in the number of Black students attending that are predominantly athletes. Are there statistics over the years that show an increase that are non-athletes? Are you making progress outside of athletics in increasing ETSU's population?
But we're making some positive strides. When I look at the number of students who are in the bridge program, most of those students are not necessarily athletes, and so we've seen some significant improvements. In fact, many years ago, Dr. Nolan wasn't here then, but years ago when we eliminated football, I thought, well, wow, these numbers are going to go down for students of color. In fact, we were able to maintain. Maybe there were more recruiting going on, but we were able to maintain those numbers because we made up in other areas. So some of the things that we're putting in place is I think you're going to see a significant difference over the next 2 to 3 years as we continue to advance the university with creating this inclusive environment.
And Chairman DiCarlo, if I could add, in the presentation that I'll give it a little bit on enrollment, the number of African-American students in 2016 comprised about 6.2% of our undergraduate population. For 2020, it's 6.7%. And the population of the institution has become more diverse at the same time that one of the driving factors that we have traditionally relied upon to bring diverse voices to the campus, international students, has gone in a completely opposite direction. So in 2016, we had 678 international students. This year, we have 288. So the diversity that we're seeing on campus is moving positively while the international students are declining. We can get you the exact numbers by classification of athlete, non-athlete, et cetera. But the bulk of the growth that we're seeing is a result of direct investments from a recruitment perspective by Dr. Sherlin's team. So our undergraduate population is more diverse at the same time that the group we'd relied upon to help with diversity, international students, are declining. But we'll break those numbers out for you in greater detail and can get that to you early next week.
If you don't mind, we can take this offline. We can discuss it later. Okay.
I hope we can attract a number of those students to engineering tech. I represent another university where in my college, that is the fastest growing major out of a college of just under 5,000 students. And that the pay, in looking yesterday at our board meeting up there, the pay for an engineering technology student right now, Dr. Johnson, is equaling that of a graduate engineer.
Yes.
And really in big demand.
Very big demand. And our students at graduation have several options right now, and it's difficult to keep up with the demand. I met with Boiler Enterprise on Wednesday of this week, and everybody that I meet with now, they're in huge demands. And we've seen a significant increase in our career fair with industry coming here, and they're coming further away to come here to recruit our students.
The way employers are identifying it to us is we hire the engineers to do the design work, and then we hire the engineering technology people to fix it.
Right. Right.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Johnson? But Dr. Johnson, on behalf of the institution, I want to thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the plan that you've developed and shared with the campus. And to members of the Board of Trustees and the campus as a whole, would encourage you to register for the conference that Dr. Johnson referenced earlier in his presentation. It's a rich agenda and a great opportunity for the community as a whole to learn more about many of the things that we've discussed today. The next item on the agenda begins under tab 7, tab 8, and it is material related to the work of the Finance and Administration Committee. I draw your attention to the materials beginning on page 77, which relate to a proposed reset of the university's out-of-state tuition and fees. This is a continuation of conversations that the board has been engaged in over the past couple of years. You've asked us questions. What can we do to be more attractive to students in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky? What can we do to help grow the enrollment from communities outside of the immediate area of Northeast Tennessee? That charge from the board has led to the work that Dr. Sherlin will now present. Once again, this material is found behind page 77 of your agenda materials, and we'll turn to Dr. Sherlin to present the item.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. As Dr. Nolan said, he will present detailed information about current enrollment in his presentation. I'd like to provide some introduction and context to his presentation from my seat. As you'll see in his information, we are down this fall 3.4% on the undergraduate side, 446 students. That's obviously not where we wanted to finish or where we want to be. I will say that I'm very proud and appreciative of all the work that has occurred to contact and support both our prospective and current students during this time. Those statements may seem contradictory, but our advisors have done incredible work over the last 6 months to support students on their continued journeys. Our bursar's office, the registrar's office, our college leads, our faculty, our housing staff have all worked together with our enrollment team in a very challenging second half of the year. As you're aware, in the spring, we called every student at East Tennessee State University to check in with them to see how they were doing and to see how we could support their continued enrollment. And I think you'll see from Dr. Nolan's information that those efforts have had an impact on student retention. In March, Dr. Mayhew and I felt very good about our position related to incoming students. We were up 200 to 250 in the number of students who had paid for orientation, and that yield had traditionally held at 92 to 93%. But for health and safety reasons, we weren't able to complete the orientation cycle in person, and our freshman yield did not hold. We were down about 135 students in freshmen. And as Dr. Nolan said, we were hit particularly hard on the international side, down 130 students there. We were up in transfers in terms of our new students, which was a significant gain. And on the whole, for new students, we finished down 25, which is basically flat in terms of our overall enrollment for new students. And I think that's solid, not where we want to be, but solid considering the headwinds we faced. And another area in which we're really proud is our Promise Plus program. We set a goal for 200 students for the fall class. These are students with the highest level of financial need and strong academic records. And our incoming class saw 213 students enrolled in that program. These students are going to have wraparound support, engagement in first year experience courses. That's 13% of our incoming freshman class. This is a program that's helping students rise. It speaks to the best of East Tennessee State University. So a lot of really great work has gone on over the last year and 6 months, particularly to help our students to stay enrolled. But while we were working there, we were also working to bring back in this class, we were also thinking about opportunities for fall 21 and what those might look like. Since the beginning of the year, our enrollment team, along with planning and decision support, have been working with McGuire and Associates. It's a nationally recognized group that specializes in tuition and aid strategies. And our goal has been to review our current tuition and aid strategy and identify strategic opportunities that spur enrollment growth while also supporting student success, access, diversity, and engagement. So we have worked with our historical data over multiple years to examine how our accepted and our admitted students have behaved. How did they vote with their feet in terms of the institutions they attended? We've developed predictive models to assess where our greatest opportunities are related to a variety of populations, particularly in-state versus out-of-state. we pursued dozens of rounds of hypothetical models for various populations on the undergraduate side. We also analyzed qualitative data from our inquiry and admit pools through surveys regarding what's important in the enrollment decision. One of the key factors that we found is list price. List price is a key factor in decision making for students and families. And over the course of the pandemic, list price has grown even more important. We also found that we have a particularly cost-sensitive population relative to other institutions around the country, and that population is growing more cost-sensitive. So we engaged in a great deal of analysis of our tuition, our scholarship rate, and our discount rate to identify the best opportunities we have currently to drive enrollment growth and also be strategic in terms of driving outcomes related to engagement, access, and affordability, and to do so in a manner that's efficient from a cost perspective and can be communicated in a relatively straightforward approach. What we found to date in that analysis is that our current in-state model of scholarships is generally efficient for driving enrollment growth and total and net tuition revenue. However, I do believe there are additional need-based approaches on the in-state side that are going to develop as we continue to analyze and build on the work of the Promise Plus program. Where we have found significant opportunities was related to our out-of-state model. We see significant opportunity in both quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis to drive enrollment and net revenue, and to formulate a strategy that is more simple and straightforward in terms of communication. Our current out-of-state approach mimics a private institution. It's high price and high aid, with our tuition price at $28,500. We're heavily discounting based on students' GPA and geography. And we're discounting based on a 250 mile radius strategy across 9 states. So if you're inside that radius in one state, you'll get one level of award. And if you're outside that 250 mile radius, you'll get another level of award. So you can have individuals in counties next door to each other receiving different awards. It also is expanded over 9 states, and all of those 9 states are not particularly high in terms of our overall admits. And students through this model are paying net costs of between $10,500 and $16,500 overall. So what we would like to do and what we're proposing is to move away from this high tuition, high aid model to a more transparent tuition strategy with a more simplified geographic approach, focusing in the 5 states that our data and practice show will provide a significant opportunity to increase enrollment. Now, our border county approach is going to continue. Those are several counties in North Carolina and Virginia, which we are waiving out-of-state tuition and giving those students the opportunity for in-state scholarships. We have a strong foothold in these counties and a strong presence. So we want to keep that portion of our out-of-state strategy. But rather than a mileage and a GPA-based approach, if you live in these 5 states, you're going to pay an out-of-state tuition price of approximately $10,500, down from $28,500 with the high scholarship model. And if you live in a state other than these 5 states, you'll pay just under $13,500 for fall 21. This projects in terms of statistical modeling to bring in first year and transfer headcount growth of over 100 students per year, and net tuition and fee revenue growth of between $500,000 and $600,000 annually. Total revenue growth of between $900,000 and $1 million annually. We really think we have significant opportunity in neighboring states, because over several years we have seen significant admit volume in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, but relatively low yield. Our border counties are seeing yield rates in the 30s, up to 40%. But these are the counties in this map that are in white, our border counties. But when you get outside of those counties, it drops down into the teens and single digits in terms of yield. This strategy that we think is going to allow us to be more competitive on price from the outset, clear on communication in these states. It sets us up to be particularly competitive in, for example, South Carolina. Our out-of-state tuition will be beneath USC Upstate. It will be beneath Radford in Virginia. If you're considering going to University of South Carolina, we're significantly below that tuition rate, and you'll be able to get a significant portion of your housing and meals covered at East Tennessee State University. Over 700 students in our 19 admit pool ended up enrolling in regional publics in North Carolina and Virginia and South Carolina. So we think this gives us significant opportunity to be more competitive on price with this population, but also to compete for students in this 5-state region who we would not have otherwise competed. It allows us the opportunity to be more aggressive in metropolitan areas like upstate South Carolina, where there are 1 million people, in Atlanta, and to come in with a low price that speaks to accessibility and affordability, allows us to get in the door on price and then compete on program, because we think we have a great story to tell on program.
Dr. Sherman?
Yes.
One quick, well, leave that up on the screen.
Okay, let me go back. Sorry.
No, you had it. Go to that one.
Okay.
Just leave it there.
Right.
So that white area defining the North Carolina, Tennessee border for the most part. The blue is more admits over the past 3 years. What's happening with those 5 or 6 counties that join us? Am I looking at that right?
Yeah. So the five counties in that the border county, we've seen strong enrollment in those counties, 700, 800, 900 in terms of our enrollment yields and good yields. I will say that enrollment has dropped a bit over a few years. This year was particularly challenging. There are a number of aspects related to that. North Carolina came out with a very aggressive in-state tuition plan. So you can attend Appalachian State or Western North Carolina for between $7,000 and $8,000. This fall was particularly challenging because it was restrictive in North Carolina and Virginia and difficult for us to get into. And then as our courses converted to online and we went through COVID, I think more students wanted to stay close to home. And with an online experience, fewer students were willing to travel out of state with this class. But on the whole, our yield has remained quite strong in those counties.
Thank you.
So to drill down a bit, Chairman Niswanger's question and looking at North Carolina, as we talked about those border counties, if you look outside those border counties, we had a Carter Plus scholarship in our current model that's in Buncombe and Henderson County. And you can see the number of admits on the left to the number of enrollees in those counties. Students in those counties are paying $10,500. They're not eligible for in-state scholarships, but that's a 22% yield. As you drop outside of those counties, our yields goes down to the single digits. Now that net cost is going to be available across the state of North Carolina, across the state of South Carolina. In upstate South Carolina, we've had 180 to 250 admits over the last 3 years. Our yield has been in the single digits. But now we're going to be under USC Upstate's tuition, and we think we can be very competitive on program with this
The
pricing
term,
strategy.
excuse me, the term yield means something different to me, I believe. But
Okay, yield
is
meant
that the number of students?
number of students who end up enrolling.
Okay. 22% of what?
22% of the students who were admitted to the institution enrolled.
Oh, thank you.
So this strategy does come with some risk. It depends on more aggressive net pricing per student. So we have to increase our out-of-state enrollment in order to make this strategy work. We need to bring in an additional 40 students a year for this to pay off. Again, it models to over 100 students per year. And the risk is reduced because this is a relatively small portion of our overall enrollment, approximately 10% of our new enrollees. And most out-of-state students are already paying a net cost between $10,500 and $16,500. So it's not a major departure from that amount. It's a relatively small portion of our enrolled population, but we think it's a portion because of our location and our program that we can really grow. And we think it's a bold but strategic strategy. In terms of implementation, we worked with McGuire because numerous institutions, particularly on the private school side, have implemented tuition resets, and they have phased these models in on a cohort basis. So this tuition reset will be available for new and transfer students in fall 21, similar to UT Chattanooga's model, SOAR in 4, that they phased in fall 2019. It will begin with new students and be phased in with each class. Our current students will continue with their scholarship model and agreement they came in with. We will hold their out-of-state portion flat in order to be as equitable as possible. It will reduce complexity because they're going to continue with their current scholarship model. We wouldn't see the shock of the revenue loss across the board if it were implemented across all students at one time. Marketing is going to be critical for this plan if it's going to go well. So we have a plan to go out the door as quickly, hopefully, as we can be approved, with a multi-channel strategy for print, digital, and a road tour, as Chairman Niswonger mentioned, in these states. We'll be working with school administrators and counselors, our own teachers and administrators who are working in these states. We'll be leveraging alumni relationships and really focusing on the quality of our experience at ETSU, affordability, proximity. We found in recruitment that the million folks in upstate South Carolina, many of them don't realize we're only 2 hours away. So we are close to many, many students that we think that we can get to and recruit, and our programs in the health sciences, in business, in technology, in education, in the arts. We have distinctive opportunities that we know are attractive because we've seen it work in Buncombe and Henderson counties. We plan to focus on those high admit, low yield counties in neighboring states, population centers in proximity. We're also going to use our inquiry pool and quantitative analysis to focus on the students who are in our inquiry pool who factors would indicate are most likely to be able to convert. We're not going to be able to reach all students in the same manner, so we're going to have to be strategic, both in terms of our marketing and our student outreach. And then over time, we can review those expanded areas of opportunity and grow our presence as we continue to establish our footholds. The strategic outcomes that we believe will be derived from this effort, it's going to support student engagement. Out-of-state students will be coming from 5 states in increasing numbers, ready to engage on our campus. They're going to be living on our campus in higher numbers, engaged in activities, engaged in the academic experience because they're going to be traveling for program. It's going to promote access because we're going to have the ability to move into metropolitan areas and be competitive in a way that we think we haven't been competitive before. It's going to speak to financial need. Students who are bringing the Pell Grant with them will have a significant portion of their tuition costs covered before they arrive. And particularly for those students, we think it's going to create greater access for the institution. We think it leads on affordability at the right time when students and families are in the headwinds of a pandemic, and the effects of that pandemic are going to be felt for years to come. It's going to allow us to really get in and compete in neighboring states. Now, some states could respond like North Carolina did by lowering their tuition, but we're going to get in early and establish footholds in these states. And what we've seen in Buncombe and Henderson counties, that those students continue to come because they're coming for the academic experience, they're coming for the program, and our student experience will be enhanced. So we think it's the right strategy at the right time for relatively low risk with a big strategic upside. We've got to make it work, but we think we have a plan to do that. So I'll stop there and take any questions that you have.
I have a question, Dr. Sherlin.
Yes.
The state require a certain percentage of in-state versus out-of-state students?
No, there's no requirement there. Now, we have to be every bit as aggressive with our in-state students. 90% of our enrolling class comes from in-state. So this is a both and strategy, certainly. But just because of our location and program, we think we're uniquely positioned to do better on the out-of-state side.
Well, I totally agree, because if you just took a map and you took off all of, the county lines and everything, and you put a circle around where we are, it certainly makes a lot of sense. And I'm just surprised that we haven't, been able to do this over a long period of time. My second question is, if we are successful, how are we going to deal with housing?
That's a great problem to have. We have capacity currently, and we've got significant capacity on the housing side. We also have a plan that we're prepared to move on for additional construction if need be. So I think we'll have time to get there, but if needed, a few years ago, we were also able to put students in hotels for a short period of time, and then we moved them in over the course of the year. I'll be dying to have that problem.
And do you think other schools will start the same model, and then will that cause any kind of price war? Do you ever?
Potentially, that could. But what I like about this is that we're going to be first to the punch, and that we're going to have the opportunity to work on this for a couple of years, establish these footholds, and the quality of our academic programs is so outstanding, and the student experience is really good. That's the data we're getting back from our students. So I'm confident that we're going to move this and build out from there. And we've continued to be pretty successful in North Carolina right now, and they're well beneath us.
And if I could follow up on, if I could follow up on Trustee Latimer's question about the timing. A number of years ago, when Tennessee Promise was started, we were under the auspices of the Tennessee Board of Regents, which did not authorize institutions to move in this direction. So we institutionally moved a scholarship program through. So quite often we ask, what are the benefits of board governance at a local level? And this is one of those benefits. This gives you as the board the ability to set fees for our institution in an individualized manner. So a lot of the workarounds that Dr. Sherlin described of high price, high aid were what we had to develop within the confines of our prior governance structure. this proposal that staff is bringing to the board for your consideration is only possible because of the presence of a board of trustees.
Yeah. I mean, we had 250 admits from Charlotte in this past class. We brought in 13 students from Charlotte. I mean, there are just opportunities there that this will allow us to better maximize.
Well, I can imagine with the, we have the diversity of the programs that so many within this 250-mile radius don't have the opportunity to even know about. So it's very interesting.
Are there other questions for Dr. Sherlin?
I don't have any questions. I have a comment. I applaud the work that you all have done, and I do think this has a tremendous opportunity to increase our footprint in areas. And once we do that, then word of mouth will keep students coming, because you're right, we do offer quality programs and student experience. I just would like to ask that graduate school tuition be on the agenda for looking at in the future.
Appreciate that. I think Dr. McGee is very committed to that work. Graduate school tuition is very complex, but she's talked about taking that on.
Other questions for Dr. Sherlin?
I just want to make sure I understand. Are you saying the new board structure over the last 3 years, you believe this new flexibility was not allowed under the old structure?
Chairman DiCarlo, under the Board of Regents structure, the board, because they touch from Mountain City to Memphis, really looked to apply general policies across all those institutions. The board did afford in the 90s the opportunity for us to put in place the border county, but a big reset of tuition was not ever anything we were able to move through that system. So now with the transition to our board, you have the ability to set our tuition and fees, which is what has yielded this proposal we're bringing to you today. And as you'll recall, early on at retreat we had down in Greenville, and we need to do another retreat in the spring, but that's another topic for another day. One of the questions that you all asked us was, what could we do to be more competitive in out-of-state markets? So this proposal today traces its roots back to a lot of questions the board has asked about how can we be more competitive in North Carolina and South Carolina in particular.
And another point that's clear to me is we can't stand pat. Our high school population in Washington, Carter, Sullivan counties right now is slowly declining. And certainly we want to be the institution for students in our region and our state, but we need to expand our footprint.
And my point is, from a competitive perspective, the 250-mile radius has never seen the flexibility that you are now offered.
That's correct. Are there other questions for Dr. Sherlin? Members of the board, this is an action item. And I want to be clear on the action item as presented on page 78 of your agenda materials. This does not change the price for students who are presently enrolled at the university. The action as presented in the board materials is prospective. The reason we're bringing this to you today, as Dr. Sherlin has referenced in detail, is so that we can begin marketing for our fall 21 class. So this gives our staff the full fall and spring to recruit students from these out-of-state markets at the new price point. So that's the importance of the timing to bring that to you today. And the motion is as presented on page 78. Do we have a motion to approve of the item as presented in the board materials?
So moved.
So moved.
We've got multiple yays, so we'll just take some.
We obviously like it.
So I've got Trustee Wolf as a moved and Trustee Ayers as a second. All those in favor, Dr. Green, could you please take a roll call? I was about to do a voice vote, but I remembered we're on Zoom and we've got to do a roll call. So Dr. Green, we'll turn to you for a roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Trustee Ayers,
Aye.
Trustee DiCarlo,
Aye.
Trustee Foley,
Aye.
Trustee Grisham. No, we're having some technical difficulties with her mute. She's going to text me her response. Trustee Latimer,
Aye.
Trustee Ron Ramsey, Trustee Segal Jones,
Aye.
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
Chairman Niswonger,
Aye.
and Trustee Grisham just texted me yes.
Thank you. We'll get to work.
Well, Dr. Strolin, thanks to you and your staff. There's a lot of work that's gone into this, and now the real work begins. Next item on the agenda is an information item. It is found on pages 90 and 91 of your board materials. Per board operating procedures and aspects associated with procurement in the state of Tennessee, we are required on a quarterly basis to bring before the board any agreements for purchases in excess of $250,000 from a contractual perspective. We'll turn to our Chief Financial Officer, Dr. B.J. King, to present this information item.
Good morning, Chairman Niswonger and members of the Board of Trustees. I have an informational item today that is regarding our contracts and purchase orders over $250,000. This is an item that is normally presented to the Finance Committee each meeting. In this presentation on page 91 today, we have 3 contracts or purchase orders that are either multi-year or over $250,000. Included were a grants management software system that will be used in our Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. We also had some specialty medical MD coverage for our medical residency programs. And we also have IT consulting services. So these are items that were went through the process and were completed by June 30 of 2020. So the last quarter of our fiscal year. We do have 3 upcoming items that are in process. We have a facilities renovation, multi-year, multi-vendor RFP. We have graduation regalia through the registrar's office and internet service provider through our IT office. This report does not include agreements that are associated with construction projects that were approved through the State Building Commission, because those are really routed through that whole process, which is very thorough, and those are not reported to our board. Of course, if you ever have a question about those projects, you can let me or Jeremy Ross know, and we'll provide any information that you need. But are there any questions on this item? Hearing none, I turn this back over to Dr. Nolan. Thank you so much.
Dr. King, thank you. And to members of the board, we've been here for a number of minutes. I'm showing 11:39. I'm not suggesting that we get up and take a break and walk around, but if you want to stretch, I'm going to stretch for a second before gearing in, because I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit. I've got a number of things I want to walk through, and I want to really give you a sense of kind of where things are on campus as we are in week 4 of the fall semester. So let me see if I can share my screen. Now that I've stretched, and are you all seeing a picture of Buffalo Mountain?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well then I passed one of the multiple tests that I was afraid I was going to fail. So let's go ahead and jump in. I want to walk through the following items with you today. I want to give you a sense of where we are from a COVID-19 perspective on campus. I want to give you a profile of enrollment. I want to talk some about budgets, and then want to shift and look forward. To say that the fall semester has been different is the understatement of the year. This was a picture of our campus on the first day of school. So imagine the first day of school. People are out everywhere in a normal setting. We've got tables set up to help people find their way across campus. Never in the 9 falls that I've been at East Tennessee State University did I think we'd have a bear on campus the first day of school. But in many respects, this fall has been a bear, no pun intended. But that is not Photoshop. That is literally a picture of a bear right in front of Gilbert Hall. So we've had a lot of fun with that. And it really is a sense of just how unique many aspects have been at this institution over the course of the past couple of months. I want to set the stage with where things are nationally as it relates to COVID. COVID clearly has disrupted many aspects of our lives, but it's also disrupted operations of American higher education. And I provided you with a couple of examples. At Ohio University, significant loss of faculty and staff with termination of union contracts, administrative contracts, and faculty, and then the receipt of pay reductions for all of their employees. Public University in Washington, Central Washington University declared financial exigency. The state of Maryland and their General Assembly was facing $413 million worth of cuts. The bulk of that was absorbed by higher education. And the NCAA, and you know things are bad when the NCAA furloughs folks because they have more money than God. All of their employees are taking 3 to 8 weeks worth of furloughs. Now let's look at how it's impacting students. Earlier this week, I went out on the Chronicle, which is kind of the paper of papers for higher education insiders, and was really stunned to see stories on those first 2 bullets. Grand Valley State University has required that all students living in, near, or on campus shelter in place effective yesterday through October 1st because of an increase of 600 cases in a very short period of time. The health department in Boulder has urged all students at the University of Colorado, irrespective of where they live, to shelter in place for 2 weeks. And a similar request has been made by the health department for students at the University of Arizona. So if that were here, that's the equivalent of all of our students in the Tree Streets, University Edge, Monarch, and all of the residence halls surrounding campus sheltering in place for 2 weeks. That's how complex COVID is at many institutions across the country. And you see other examples there on the screen of how COVID is impacting students across the landscape of American higher education. One way which COVID has really been disruptive is within the space of enrollment. Dr. Sherlin alluded to this earlier. Multiple entities from bond rating agencies to think tanks such as ACE have all predicted that enrollment would decline across the nation this fall. And when presidents were surveyed by ACE about their expectations for fall enrollment, most presidents, irrespective of setting, felt that they would see significant decreases in enrollment. And some institutions are projecting enrollment declines of more than 20% going into the fall. So presidents were very worried and skeptical about the fall, very concerned that COVID would have a negative impact on students' decisions to attend college. And as you look through this, you also see that we were concerned about delivery type and keeping our students safe. And at most institutions across the nation, you saw a shift from on-ground to online. That shift was extremely pronounced in community colleges, where community colleges nationally indicated that less than 20% of their courses would be on ground. So one of the things we were interested in at ETSU was to get a sense of what our students thought. How were our students thinking and feeling going into the fall? And Dr. Hoff and his team surveyed students between July 19th and July 31st because we wanted to take this survey information from students to help inform our decisions. We had a 37% response rate. 6,500 students responded to our survey. The bulk of our survey respondents indicated that they planned to enroll. And for those who were not, it really wasn't because of COVID that they weren't enrolling, it was because of finances. So what do our students say about the work that we had done to date. The top two bullets, I think, are really affirming of the work of your faculty and staff. For students who were enrolled in the spring, 77% indicated that they had a good experience. 83% of our students were confident or extremely confident that ETSU was going to do the right things to keep them safe. And as we moved through this, what we saw is that students felt good about their decision to come and return to campus in the fall. Many wanted to be on ground, but most, 94%, said that they had the technology to participate online if that's the direction we went. So these surveys informed our actions. But in the spring, we also surveyed our faculty. So in the middle of a pandemic, we did a survey of institutional climate. And one of the things that's really affirming for me is that in the middle of a pandemic, when this survey was administered, the overall rate of kind of how you feel about your space at the institution increased. So 76% job satisfaction, 70% support on the teaching environment, 62 on shared governance. Shared governance went up in the middle of a pandemic. And as you look across those levels, what this really tells to me is that COVID may have changed how we operate. We may be meeting on Zoom today, but COVID did not take away who we are as an institution. So we use these surveys to drive our action. And this slide kind of walks through what we've done. Based upon this information from the surveys, as well as the recommendations of our medical response team, we moved all of our housing elements from the plan that we'd put in place back in April, which was doubles, to single units. I want to thank Dr. Bonnie Burchett and her staff in housing for their work over a 3-week time period to go from 2,700 students in the residence halls to less than 1,700 students in the residence halls. We made that decision in the interest of health and safety. Most of our courses transitioned to an online environment, and that decision was driven by our faculty. If you look at other institutions across the country where there was significant angst around delivery mechanisms, our faculty drove this decision, and the feedback we've received from students thus far has been positive about experience for the fall. We've allowed faculty and staff the ability to continue to work from home as health and personal circumstances dictate, and the majority of our offices, mine included, are on a rotational staffing format. We've got a rich and regularly updated website. We've got a COVID-19 dashboard. We've shared the link with the campus, and we've put in place a significant volume of contact tracing, quarantine protocols, classroom prep, et cetera. In fact, Jeremy Ross's unit, which is primarily tasked with building buildings, in many respects this fall has turned into a MASH unit as they've spent their fall helping to assist with a lot of the public health related elements affiliated with COVID. We will launch next week random testing of students, faculty, and staff. And this is at the recommendation of our health team. We put in place the opportunity for an opt-in protocol for students, faculty, and staff. And you see that we have more than 800 members of the university family who will be participating. And we will randomly administer COVID tests throughout the remainder of the semester to give us a sense of how the virus is moving through the campus. And I rarely put cartoons and PowerPoints, but Dr. Bishop shared this with me a few weeks ago, and it's kind of become a staple of my presentation since then. Chairman Niswonger, members of the board, we've made a lot of mistakes. We've not done everything perfect during this time period. But as the cartoon says, don't be too hard on yourself. It's your first apocalypse, or in this case, pandemic. But I would like to share with you unsolicited email that I received from someone earlier this week that gives you a sense of how things are going on campus. And then after sharing this with you, I want to pause to see what questions you may have for me about the university's COVID response. This email reads as follows. As you may know, some of our dining services team members have pre-existing medical conditions, and a lot of them were very concerned about coming back to work at the beginning of the semester. They thought that students would not follow mask and social distancing policies and would be rude if approached about COVID safety, etc. We're seeing the exact opposite. So therefore, on behalf of the 110 food service workers at Sodexo, I want to thank the university from the bottom of my heart for the support the student body and administration has shown to us. It's truly a joy to serve these students because they make it easy for us to perform our duties. They've been supportive. They comply with mask and social distancing policies when they are the dining services area. I'm especially grateful for the athletes because they've been exemplary and supportive, and they always comply with policy. I'll be honest, some of the football players this fall are big, and it would be intimidating to approach them, but I can tell you that they've shown concern, patience, and support to our team members. I just thought I needed to share this with you. Thank you, Kelvin Takawasha, who's the head general manager for Sodexo. Kelvin's comments, I think, are reflective of comments from across the campus. I've sat in on more than 20 ETSU 1020 courses in the past few weeks. We're holding focus groups with students. And Mr. Chair, we've got a long way to go. We can't take our finger off the pulse. But thus far, the semester on campus has gone well. And I want to pause to see if the board has any questions for me about COVID and the impact of COVID on the institution before moving to the next phase of my update.
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. In executive session with President Olin last week, President of Faculty Senate Stephen Hendricks expressed his appreciation for how the president has led us through this crisis. And I just want to echo that. His leadership and the leadership team have put safety of people in our ETSU and broader community first. And our faculty do not have the complaints of other faculties across the country about having how courses are delivered, because Dr. Bishop did lead the faculty in deciding for themselves how their course should best be delivered. And Jeremy Ross's team, when decisions were made that there was a need for face-to-face experiences, they helped identify and create the space for safe face-to-face interactions. And the Center for Teaching Excellence and Dr. King's group with ATS have just been remarkable in assisting faculty in redesigning their courses for quality delivery during a pandemic. So as a professor of leadership and a scholar of leadership, I have frequently tell President Nolan that the buck stops with him. So it also starts with him. And I just want to say thank you for your leadership during this time.
Dr. Foley, thank you. That means a great deal. This has probably been the most difficult 6 months of my professional career. But the support of the faculty, staff, and students is what keeps us going. And we've got a lot of semester ahead of us, and I look forward to what the rest of the semester holds.
Dr. Nolan, could you comment on the interaction with governmental entities and the health community locally? How are you doing coordinating with everyone locally?
Chairman DiCarlo, this is where we as a university are fortunate. The presence of the Academic Health Sciences Center at our institution is one of the main reasons why things have gone the way that they have gone and so smoothly. So the ability to have a College of Medicine, a College of Public Health, a College of Nursing not only helps frame our work, but those individuals have rich relationships with Dr. Kursky and other public health leaders in the region. So contact tracing seamless. We work in conjunction with the health department on contact tracing. And I'm gonna move past this cartoon because I just can't stare at a cartoon that much longer, but I'm gonna keep answering your question. So as we have worked through contact tracing, if we have a positive, we work in conjunction with the health department to back map that tracing through the community. We were the first stand-up COVID testing site in the region. We did that in conjunction with the health department. We've continued to have screenings on campus in conjunction with the health department. The state has provided the institution with 4,000 Everlywell tests, which give us the ability to test students on demand, to test faculty on demand, but then also to put in place the random testing protocols that I referenced. Dr. Jonathan Moorman is on Governor Lee's COVID response team and his task force. So the ability to have medicine, pharmacy, public health all here not only drives our internal team, but gives us pretty strong relationships with the external public health officials. Other questions on COVID?
Brian, this is Kelly. I just wanted to say great job on identifying the benefits of the single occupancy dorm rooms up front. That's a big deal and obviously has made a big impact. I've heard all kinds of stories from friends who have kids at other institutions, and it's not one student that gets COVID, it's their whole suite that gets it. So that's bound to have made a huge impact.
But Trustee Wolf, it has, and it was a decision that kind of came late in the game. Many students were disrupted. They were looking forward to living with a roommate that they'd picked. We did our best to put them in close proximity to one another. You know, part of the aspect with COVID is everything you've been trained to do throughout your career, you've had to set aside. You know, our whole careers were taught to maximize on-campus occupancy, to ensure that you provide a supportive environment. But this year, by leading with health first, it's the first year I've ever voluntarily thrown millions of dollars out the window. But that's what we did when we moved to singles, because 1,000 students were no longer on campus. But we made that decision to keep people safe. Other questions about COVID?
Well, just looking at your numbers today, where we've got 19 active and 35 folks quarantined, if we look down the road a little bit at someone that's 3 times our size, but they have 25 times the amount of COVID activity down there in active cases. Congratulations. I think I speak for the whole board on this one. Congratulations on everything that you've done to control this to the best of your abilities, you and the entire staff.
Well, Mr. Chair, I thank you, but the real accolades go to the staff and to our students. I can't say enough thanks to our students. They've done everything we've asked them to do. Well, I'd like to ask them to move on from COVID. Let's look forward. I look forward to the day in February when this picture is shown. But let's drop down and look at enrollment a little bit. This fall is slightly different than what I thought it would have been if you talked to me in fall of 19. But these are our enrollment numbers for the fall semester. We are within our budgeted confidence intervals. The budget adjustments that I'll talk about in a little bit provide the base for the budget for the fall. Barring some unforeseen circumstance, I do not see the need for further budget adjustments this year. We've got a number of programs with strong enrollment growth: nursing, psychology, biology, computer science, management. And as you look across the institution, undergrad's down, graduates relatively flat, and then some fluctuations in medicine and pharmacy. As we look at other institutions across the state, I'm going to share comparative information for other schools at the State of the University address on October the 9th. But it's my understanding that undergraduate enrollment is down at almost every institution in the state of Tennessee. Austin Peay, Middle, Memphis. It's my understanding that enrollment in the community college sector is down between 10 and 22%. That every community college is down at least double digits, and some are down more than 20%. But I'll provide detailed comps on that at the State of the University address. Here's the demographic information that I was referencing earlier in the board meeting. You see the breaks by race and ethnicity. And I draw your attention at the bottom of the chart to male enrollment. Dr. Hoff, in presentation after presentation, has talked about the need for us to bring more males back to college, and COVID turned that trend further in the wrong direction. So we got a lot of work to do here, but as you look at the composition of our students, primarily female, primarily Caucasian, but increased diversity across the class. Here's a breakout by county in Tennessee, as well as out-of-state enrollment. I'll draw your attention to the bottom of the chart first. You see that out-of-state enrollment. This is why we made the push on the proposal that Dr. Sherlin just presented, so that we can turn these numbers in a different direction. But I draw focused attention on the international column. In 2016, just a few short years ago, there were 678 international students on our campus. Now there are 288 international students on our campus. If we could have just held the international numbers constant, we would have not had an enrollment decline at the university. If you look up top for Tennessee counties, some fluctuation, Washington down a little bit, Sullivan up a little bit. There's not anything up top that's troubling to me. Our staff has done what they needed to do. Tennessee numbers held strong. They waffle and waver in any given year. It's the fluctuation in the out-of-state markets and the international markets that we've got to look to move, particularly the out-of-state. And on behalf of the staff, I want to thank the board for their approval of the position that Dr. Sherlin brought to you. Let's drill down on our freshman class. Throughout the summer, I had talked about students not taking a gap year, but unfortunately, many high school seniors across the nation, and you'll see freshman numbers for most institutions in the state of Tennessee, I anticipate similar to ours, down. Students took the fall off because they were uncertain as to what the fall would present. So even with the decline, one of the things I'm really proud of is the fact that the overall academic comp of the class didn't change. The GPA is still right at a 3.5. The ACT's right around a 23.5. The bulk of our freshman class are from Tennessee, but you see the numbers as it relates to some of the border county and work there. So some ability to grow. And down at the bottom, those are our high-end merit scholarships. Those are all down a little bit, but we're confident that they'll rebound. So that's enrollment. And as we look at enrollment, from my perspective, we really have done an outstanding job of balancing enrollment in the face of a pandemic. Sometimes I'm often accused of being a naive optimist. I'm also accused of being more than a glass half full person. But the slide I'm getting ready to show you, I never would have predicted. If you would have told me in the middle of a pandemic that this institution would have the highest retention rate in the history of the university, I'd have thought you were crazy. But Mr. Chair and members of the board, what this slide shows is the retention rate for students at East Tennessee State University from last fall to this fall. That number is the highest in the history of the university. Dr. Sherlin in his comments referenced the fact that in the spring, we called every single student at this campus to check in to see how they were doing. I called students, everyone called students. Our students in their survey responses, if you will recall, stated that 77% were pleased or very pleased with how the university handled the spring. This is not a number that is a one office number. This is every faculty, every staff, from grounds, custodial services, all the way to academic advising. But on behalf of the university, it is my pleasure to convey to the board that this fall is the highest retention rate in the history of this institution. Oh, and by the way, it's also the highest graduation rate in the history of the university. Last year was the highest, we tied it, so I'm gonna say it's the highest again. Once again, in a pandemic, record student success. Now, how does that come into play? If more students are moving through and graduating, and we know that the demographic cliff is on the horizon, we've got to work harder than ever to recruit students to the institution because we know what's around the corner. So let me pause for a second and see if there are any questions about the enrollment or student success data that I just shared with the board.
You go back one slide for just a minute.
Here, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I wanted another second to look at that.
So this is demographic data that I've shared with you each of the past 2 board meetings. So this is board meeting number 3, and I'm doing it for a reason. Last time I shared this slide, we talked about the demographic cliff. This all traces back to the recession of 2008 and declines in the birth rate. But by 2025, there will be less students graduating from high school than there was the year before.
Yeah.
And across all sectors, you're going to see the competition for students become pronounced.
Yeah.
So questions on enrollment? All right, so let's quick update on the budget. And you may wonder, why in the world is he showing graduates on a budget update? Well, as you all know, we are rewarded by the state of Tennessee for outcomes. And the primary driver of those outcomes is progression of students through the pipeline and the production of degrees. So this is the report card that the state holds us to. Here was our performance last year. As you will recall, we were the top performing institution university-wise in the state of Tennessee on the outcomes formula. Going into the session, here's what we thought we were going to receive from the state. COVID brought that legislative session to an abrupt close. Midsummer, we received this memo from Mike Krause, instructing us to cut 12% from our budget. And in the July meeting, we talked at length about the work that the university did to adjust budgets accordingly. This is the level of funding that we received from their state. The primary reduction was the reduction of salaries. But it was all said and done when we looked at enrollment declines, et cetera. This was the amount of reduction that we needed to take across the campus. And since the July meeting, we have made the reductions to remove that $8.3 million from the university budget. But I just want to remind the board and the campus on how we approach this. We approach this from the philosophical perspective that central administration will take a larger reduction than academic units. I don't want to say that again. Central administration took a larger reduction than the rest of the campus. That was to do our best to protect the academic core, the heart of the university. And there's the bottom line as it's moved through. What we've said is that, however, fallout will go back to units as normal. And in the next couple of weeks, we hope to have fallout finalized, and that's residual unexpended funds from last year. That'll make its way back to departments. We put in place a number of elements to reduce costs. We put in place a number of restrictions around travel, et cetera. We launched a voluntary retirement program for staff and faculty. The staff pool closed in mid-August. The faculty pool remains open. When it's all said and done, I anticipate we'll have between 120 and 140 members of the university family who will take advantage of the voluntary retirement incentive program. We've been balanced by CARES funding. We've received 3 tranches of funding from the federal government through the CARES Act. The first of $5 million was distributed directly to students in the spring. So more than 8,300 students at the university received direct pass-through funding in excess of $1,000 per student to support COVID disruption costs in the spring. We were able to use some of these funds to set up emergency grants. The second tranche of funding we were able to utilize to adjust reconciliations for housing and dining refunds that we provided to students in the spring. But then we also were able to recoup some of the losses that we had because we paid people from March to May, particularly students, for jobs that they were unable to complete because they had transitioned home. And then the final element of CARES money was used to reimburse the institution for fees that we did not charge. And this was directly, the beneficiaries, Dr. Karen King, because we did not charge online fees to students during the summer term. But I want to go back, Mr. Chair, to here. Yesterday, I had the chance to meet with locals, members of our local delegation and other elected officials in the region. And I conveyed my thanks to them. And in particular, I conveyed my thanks to Governor Lee. Tennessee is unique in that we, to the best of my knowledge, are one of just a few states in the nation in which higher education was not cut. State government took a 12% reduction, but Governor Lee held higher education harmless. And that was a game changer for us, because if not, many of the difficult decisions that higher education institutions across the country are facing would have come here. So on behalf of our staff, I want to thank our legislative delegation and the governor for recognizing the important role that higher education plays as the conduit to a better future, to better jobs for citizens across the region. The reversal of this memo on May 28th, never before have I had Christmas in July, but this year we had Christmas in July on the campus of East Tennessee State University. Mr. Chair, members of the board, be happy to take any questions about the budget update.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move forward. I want to talk some about looking downstream. And that's hard to do in a COVID environment because I don't know about you, but today's the same as yesterday and tomorrow's going to be the same as today. We spend a lot of time looking at screens. I received more emails in a day than I've ever received in my life. In fact, if I could throw my phone in the water, I would some days. So let's throw our phones to the side and look forward. But before doing so, let's remind ourselves of where we've been and who we are. Who we are is an institution that was founded in 1911 for a singular purpose: to improve the quality of life for the people of this region. That's Sidney Gilbert, our founding president. The building that the bear was in front of bears his name. That mission remains constant. That mission was centered to the work that we did in 2012 as we formed the Committee for 125. The Committee for 125 was formed in a period in which we didn't have a board. Many of you on our board were members of the Committee for 125, Trustee Grisham, Trustee Nicewander in particular. You helped this institution think through where it wanted to be at our 125th anniversary and how we as an institution could drive economic development to be the transmitter of knowledge and the foundation of the community as a whole. And this was the vision that that group set, that this institution would be recognized as the driver to create a culture of excellence for our region. And that's directly from the report. These were the strategic themes. So what did we accomplish? We had a 5-year action agenda. And in that 5-year action agenda, we talked about creating new budget models, restructuring institutional advancement, coming up with a unified brand, restructuring university administration, repurposing student affairs, and engaging in outreach to state and local communities. Every single one of those boxes can be checked. To review and revitalize our facilities and campus master plans, that box has been checked. So the things that were on the 5-year action agenda for the Committee for 125 were done. So here's the 10-year horizon. New investments in signature programs identified to the plan and visioning. Fully developing the Performing Arts Complex, and I cannot wait to get the board in the Martin Center. It is beautiful beyond description. Within that 10-year time frame, we were to launch a fundraising campaign. That box is checked. We launched it last year. We're more than $85 million towards our $125 million goal. Continue to meet, if not exceed, the mandates of the Complete College Tennessee Act. I just told you a few minutes ago, we're the top performing institution in the state. And to continue our efforts to enhance our physical infrastructure. If you've been on campus anytime soon, you know that we're doing things there. But the landscape's changed a little bit since we launched 125. We've had the Focus Act. We now have a board of trustees. Tennessee Promise, UT Promise, all these other things didn't exist. Immigration policies changed. But I think one of the things that's really been a big change is that the way the public views higher education is very different now than it was before. In 12, higher education was viewed as a driver of development and a positive force for the nation. That unfortunately is not the case now. Based on recent research by Pew Charitable Trust, 84% of adults think it costs too much to go to college. 65% of adults say students aren't getting the skills they need to compete in the workforce. And half of Americans think that professors bring their political views into the classroom. And there's great variance about whether or not higher education is good for the country based upon your political affiliation. Many Americans don't think college is right for their kids, that they don't need to go to school. But we all know here that as educational attainment increases, so does earnings capacity. We know we live in a state where we trail regional and national averages as it relates to the percent of population with a college degree. But this is one that, for me, I think is an opportunity to recenter how we look at what happens at this institution. Because we're a university that was created to train teachers to go into the rural regions of our state and pass along the gift of education. When I was system chancellor in West Virginia, I used to talk all the time about an educational pipeline. Of every 100 ninth graders, how many graduated from high school? How many went on to college? And then how many graduated on time? This is that pipeline number for our state. Of every 100 ninth graders, how many graduate from high school? 90. How many go on to college? 62. And how many graduate on time? 27. So as I look at the things that are in front of us as an institution, what can we do to drive these numbers? What can we do to get more students to go on to college? What can we do to ensure that they graduate? But then ultimately, what can we do to ensure that those who do graduate stay and live and work in the state of Tennessee, particularly here in the Appalachian Highlands? So what I'd like to continue to talk through with the board is how do we get to the final phase here? This graphic is from the strategic plan that the board approved at one of your earliest meetings. The chair noted this is our 15th meeting. I think we approved this at meeting 1 or 2. Closing the loop. What worked? Celebrate what worked. Provide for changes, what didn't work. Consider new initiatives and implement. So as we move through the next couple of months, I'm really interested in potentially maybe going back to that work of 125 and looking at how do we move this institution forward. This is the last time many of us were together in person. What's wonderful there is what was Trustee Christopher Santana. Saw him on campus last week. He was in town for a wedding and I saw him in the cult. He now is living in the DC area, has an outstanding job for a company whose offices are based in DuPont Circle. That's the last time we were together. And I'd like to find some ways to get the board together for a retreat or some strategic planning conversations so that we can dig in on these issues. Because Mr. Chair, members of the board, COVID's going to go away. How can we look forward to determine where we want to be strategically so that we're not defined by COVID, we're defined by our goals. And those goals are how do we transform the lives for the people of the region. So Mr. Chair, members of the board, that completes my presentation. I'm going to leave this up in case you want me to drop back to a slide. I'd be happy to address any questions.
Brian, go back about 3 to where it listed the overall college degreed folk in Tennessee. That's the one. Okay. All I caught was the change number at 11%. And I'm like, that's not correct. So the latest data is 17 at 27%.
Yes, sir. And you know, the census is underway right now. You know, the importance of the census, it will allow us to have a full snapshot. These data are in many years from the American Community Survey. The decennial census in 90 and 2000 are really hard numbers. So hopefully when the 2020 census is complete, I can update this chart with more recent data.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions from the board about COVID, budgets, enrollment, or anything else?
These numbers just make my mind. I do hope we can get together for a strategic planning meeting because there's so much potential that it's almost like these numbers are so much behind them that we can do positively. We can't do it on a board call. We definitely need to do a deep dive with strategic planning. So fingers crossed we figure out how to make that work. I mean, just looking at 2017, I can't imagine what the census is going to be for 2020, but boy, we're a long way away from 55% of Tennessee's population having some kind of degree. I know this is just bachelor's degrees, but still, that's where that big economic boom comes, is that bachelor's degree and above.
Right.
And Trustee Ayers, that's one of the reasons why this chart for me is so powerful because it really touches things that we control. And many of our board members have initiatives underway that have driven these numbers. If you were to go back 10 years ago, that 90 was an 82. So we've moved that number because of initiatives such as those that several of you are supporting across the counties of the great state of Tennessee to move students out of the pipeline. That 62 used to have a 5 in front of it. So we've got more students going on to college. But the 62 to 27, those are things we can control. But financial aid plays through this, pricing plays through this, early college programs play through this. The complexities of this one chart alone, we could spend 5-6 hours in a retreat just pulling these numbers apart.
We could. The work of Dr. Johnson and Dr. Sherlin have a huge impact on that final number. I know that seems softer, but that may be as strong an indicator of how to get that number up as anything. That inclusivity piece is a game changer on retention.
You're right, Janet. Okay.
Okay, well, Mr. Chair, let me try to get this back to where we were. I apologize, I need to, okay. So let me get back to where we were. So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is found on page 92 of the agenda, which is tab 9. And Mr. Chair, given that the next sequence of materials all relate to board governance matters, I would like to turn the meeting back to you to walk the board through these agenda items that are found on tabs 9, 10, 11, and 12. And 9 begins on page 92 of your board materials.
Thank you. Thanks for your report. First, 10 is our selection of audit committee chair. The bylaws for the Board of Trustees provide that the chair of each standing committee be designated by the board for a 2-year term upon the recommendation of the chair. Competencies and professional or business experience of members and previous board and committee experience of trustees, together with any special qualification required by these bylaws for the certain committees, will be considered in committee and chair appointments. If a vacancy occurs in the committee or chair position prior to the expiration of the 2-year term, the board shall appoint a trustee to fill the remainder of the term upon the recommendation of the chair. As chairman, I would ask for a motion and a second for the appointment of trustee Melissa Stegall Jones as chairman of the audit committee for the remainder of the unexpired term previously held by David Golden.
Mr. Chairman, this is Trustee Wolf, and she's here for a reason. I make that motion.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Trustee Ayers. Dr. Green, will you take the vote?
Trustee Ayers,
Aye.
Trustee DiCarlo,
Aye.
Trustee Foley,
Aye.
Trustee Grisham, Trustee Grisham. We're still having some. She texted me aye. Trustee Latimer,
Aye.
Trustee Ron Ramsey, Trustee Stegall Jones,
Aye.
Trustee Wolf,
Aye.
and Chairman Niswonger.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Item 11 today is the selection of the board vice chair. The bylaws call for the Board of Trustees to provide for the election of chair and vice chair every 2 years. As chairman, I would like to move for the appointment of trustee Linda Lattimore as our vice chair for the Board of Trustees for the remainder of the unexpired term held by David Golden. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Green?
Yes, sir. Trustee Ayers,
Aye.
trustee DeCarlo,
Aye.
trustee Foley,
Aye.
trustee Grisham has texted aye, trustee Latimer,
Aye.
trustee Ramsey, trustee Stigall Jones, trustee Wolf,
Aye.
chairman Niswonger.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. 12, selection of executive committee members. With the approval of the amendments to the bylaws for the Board of Trustees earlier in the meeting, the amended bylaws now provide for a third board member that shall be elected by the board to serve for 2 years, beginning July the 1st of the year elected. In the event of a vacancy before expiration of the term, a successor shall be elected to fill the unexpired term at the next meeting of the board following creation of the vacancy. As chairman, I would like to move for the appointment of trustee Steve DeCarlo as a member of the executive committee. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Dr. Green?
Trustee Ayers,
Aye.
trustee DeCarlo,
Aye.
trustee Foley,
Aye.
trustee Grisham, texted an aye, trustee Latimer,
Aye.
trustee Stigall Jones,
Aye.
trustee Wolf,
Aye.
and chairman Niswonger.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. The next item of business that we have, I believe Dr. Nolan has the resolution in his office, but it's a resolution for the appreciation of David Golden for his service during this period of time as we first met as a board. And David being a good friend of mine and many times a mentor, I'd like to read the resolution for your consideration. Whereas David A. Golden helped to lead one of the world's most dynamic companies, Eastman Chemical, as Senior Vice President, Chief Legal and Sustainability Officer, and Corporate Secretary, and whereas former Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam, recognizing Mr. Golden's commitment to a better and brighter future for our region, selected him as one of the inaugural members of the East Tennessee State University Board of Trustees. And whereas Mr. Golden immediately and energetically immersed himself in the life of ETSU as the board prepared for its historic first meeting in 2017 and has continued to do so throughout his tenure. And whereas as vice chair of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Golden established himself as a loyal and vocal advocate for students, faculty, staff, and alumni of ETSU. And whereas Mr. Golden effectively brought his wisdom and knowledge as an attorney and as corporate executive to the table as an engaged and enthusiastic member of the board. And whereas Mr. Golden provided expert leadership as chair of the audit committee for the Board of Trustees. And whereas Mr. Golden has given generously of his time and talents in the best interest of ETSU, its policies, its programs, and its people. Therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees extends its deepest appreciation and congratulations to David A. Golden for his exemplary service and for representing the very highest ideals of East Tennessee State University by the East Tennessee State University Board of Trustees. This date, September the 18th, 2020. Do I have a motion for acceptance of this resolution?
So moved.
Do I have Linda second? Okay. Yes. All right. David or Adam, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Trustee Ayers.
Aye.
Trustee DiCarlo.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Trustee Grisham. Texted aye. Trustee Latimer.
Aye, and he was a great mentor.
Trustee Stigall Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Wolf.
Aye.
And Chairman Niswonger.
Aye. As you all know, he is now over at the B School in a chair of excellence. I think he and Dean Depew will get along famously, and I'm expecting big things, I think, as we all are.
And Mr. Chair, one note, David did attempt to join. In fact, he was on for a little bit.
He's still here.
He's still here?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, former Trustee Golden, now Chair of Excellence holder, is still here. Mr. Golden, any comments?
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, everybody. It's that was hard to sit through. I'm glad you didn't cut to me quickly. You'd see me recovering from a sudden allergy onset that's coming back. I just want to tell you how much I appreciated serving with the best university board in the world. It was a really, really tough decision to step down. I'm going to miss a lot of the opportunity to work with you as a board. I look forward to the opportunity to work in a different capacity with the board. Maybe you could convince the president to add, when you do a retreat, I can still come to retreats. I'll just be in a different capacity. I know that talent in our world is universal and opportunity is not. And I'm going to work my darndest to help the university move the needle to make opportunity more universal in our region, so we can play our part more fully to help change the world. Thank you to all of you for being great peers and friends and mentors. It has truly been a privilege to serve on this board.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Other business today? Seeing none, and I am really disappointed that Governor Ramsey is not here to adjourn us. So I would ask someone else to make that motion today that we may vote on it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Dorothy actually texted something she'd like to relay to everyone, if that's okay.
Certainly.
One, she wanted to send her best to Trustee Golden and thanks you for your service. And she also wanted to state earlier when Dr. Johnson and Dr. Sherlin were speaking about the great work happening under their leadership, and particularly the Bridge program, and that all that you are doing. She applauds you to get students into and through post-secondary education.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, Dorothy. Did we get a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Linda.
I see it. A first and a second.
Yes.
All right. Roll call.
Well, I can't wait till we go back face to face. Trustee Ayers.
Aye.
Trustee DiCarlo.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Trustee Grisham. It's texted aye. Trustee Latimer.
Aye.
Trustee Stigall Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Wolf. And Chairman Niswonger.
Aye. Hopefully the next one will be in person, but it was really great to see each of your faces in your own habitat today for the most part. So thank you and have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks. Everyone have a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Good
Bye.
to see you.
Bye.